Here are some highlights from microeconomics we'll need as we go forward in intermediate macro. Of course, a complete review of introductory micro would do you good. How could it not? There are a few topics from microeconomics that will be very important to keep in mind as we dig deeper into intermediate macro. The first one is market clearing equilibrium of the supply and demand model. This is an important topic in any study of economics, and I have a video about it that you should see. The second topic is shifts in demand and supply. What I'm about to say assumes a thorough understanding of the supply curve as a relationship that tells us how much of a good or service will be offered at a given price. And that the demand curve is a relationship that tells us how much of a good or service will be demanded or purchased at a given price. Please review the basic supply and demand model if you have any questions about what I just said. On the supply side, the supply curve for a good or service shifts to the right. That is, there is an increase in supply at all prices when there's an increase in the number of suppliers, there's a decrease in the cost of the factors of production, there's a decrease in the price of an alternative use of factors of production, there's a change in technology that reduces production cost, or when suppliers expect that the price will decrease in the future. We call that expectations. Now note, when I say cost, this is money paid by the supplier, and when I say price, that's money that's paid to the supplier. Some texts include weather as a shifter of the supply curve. Something like, adverse weather shifts the supply curve of agricultural good to the left. Think hurricanes and the citrus crop in Florida. But we can also think of this as a reduction in the number of suppliers. That is, some suppliers leave the market because of loss of crop. Now, what are the macroeconomic equivalents of these shifters? First off, we wouldn't expect shifts in the supply of a single good or service to affect the whole macroeconomy, would we? Well, yes, if that good was oil, for example. Secondly, there are economy-wide events that shift the supply curves of many or all markets. For example, a widespread disaster may result in a literal decrease in the number of suppliers of some or many goods and services. Or when a large fraction of the workforce is drafted to go to war, which may cause an increase in the factor cost of labor. As a result of wartime production, the prices of war-related goods or services may increase, so that firms may shift their factors from non-war-related goods and services to war-related goods and services, thereby reducing the supply of non-war-related goods and services. There are certainly technologies that result in lower costs in some markets, and then there are technologies that reduce costs across all markets. Transistors in the 1960s, the internet in the 1990s, both of these affected virtually all markets. Cell phones and banking technologies have affected costs across most of the macroeconomy. Finally, supplier expectations are a big influence in shifts of the aggregate supply. This is an important effect in recessions that we'll discuss later. On the demand side, the demand curve for a good or service shifts to the right. That is an increase in demand at all prices when there is an increase in consumer taste or preference for that good or service. There is an increase in the number of consumers. The price of a substitute increases, or the price of a complement decreases. When consumer income increases for a normal good, or decreases for an inferior good, and when consumers expect that the price will increase in the future. We call this expectations. From a macroeconomic point of view, consumers include households, firms, and government. Consumer taste has certainly changed over the years, and it's hard to say what effect that has had on the microeconomy. But we do know that in a recession, households, and especially firms, lose their taste for spending in general, and during a boom, consumer tastes lean towards higher levels of spending. Government, on the other hand, may have an increased preference for consumption during a recession, which we call stabilization, It comes in the form of extended unemployment benefits and stimulus spending. In the long run, population growth is a source of economic growth. In the short run, the same shocks that affect supply may also effectively reduce the number of consumers, a widespread disaster or wartime draft, for example. Shifts in the prices of substitutes and complements shouldn't affect the macroeconomy, since that just means consumers are buying different stuff, right? Well, what if that shift results in more imports or less imports? Increasing consumer income is an interesting question in macroeconomics. On a microeconomic level, consumers having more money to spend on stuff is a positive thing, right? In macroeconomics, however, we have to ask the question where that income came from. Higher wages? Higher wages probably means that some goods and services became more expensive. That increase in prices reduces the purchasing power of the consumer's increased income, and so they can buy less stuff. Sounds like a vicious cycle? Well, it is partly. Sometimes, however, that increased income comes from improved efficiency, which may result in higher income and lower prices. Finally, consumer expectations are also a big influence in shifts of aggregate demand. When consumers see prices falling, as they do going into recession, they put off buying things knowing that the price will be lower in the future. This tends to worsen the recession. The third topic for microeconomics has to do with market structure. You will have seen some of this in an introductory micro course, and you will have certainly explored it in some depth if you've had intermediate micro. And if you're really lucky, you'll get to take a course in industrial organization sometime, the central topic of which is market structure. One market structural idea to bring from micro into macro is that of perfect competition. In perfect competition, firms are price takers. No one firm owns a big enough piece of the market to be able to push the price up or down. As a result, in perfect competition, prices are equal to marginal cost. There is no economic profit. Price equals marginal cost is synonymous with perfect competition. This is an important assumption in our early models of macroeconomics and a source of price stickiness. The other market structure idea is markets that are not perfectly competitive. That is, firms are price setters. This will come up midway in our discussion of short-run macroeconomic models when we start looking at the details of aggregate supply.